Hello everyone, welcome to our cozy corner of the internet where we explore stories of mystery and suspense. I am your narrator, here to guide you through tales that will both pique your interest and bring you comfort as you drift off to sleep. Before we begin, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more captivating stories. Now, before we start, relax your body. Take a deep breath, slowly close your eyes, and let the tranquility outside your window and the whispers of the night's first story. The name of the story is The Faint Flicker on the Highway Late at Night. It's just past midnight, and I'm hauling a loaded semi down State Route 76 in the thick of a spring thunderstorm. Rain streaks across my windshield in sheets, and the wipers are working overtime, slicing through the water, but barely keeping up. There's something about driving a big rig alone at night that sharpens every sense. A low rumble of the engine. Every mile marker flashes by like a heartbeat echoing in the dark. I've driven this stretch dozens of times, but tonight it feels different. Like the road itself is watching me. The only light piercing the gloom comes from my headlights, cutting through the sheets of rain in narrow beams. My phone is mounted beside the dash, its glow dimmed to preserve battery. I glance at the GP. 27 miles to the next rest stop. 47 miles to the nearest town. I'm tired, but not sleepy. There's a rush you get from driving through a downpour, a mix of adrenaline. Still, I find myself scanning the edges of the road, half expecting something to step out of the darkness. About 20 minutes into the drive, I notice something odd in my passenger side mirror, a faint flickering glow far behind me, just beyond the reach of my headlights. At first, I think it's a trick of the rain or a reflection off a guardrail. But when I adjust my angle, the glow reappears small, pulsing like a lantern, swinging in a breeze. My heart picks up pace. I'm used to seeing deer or a solitary street lamp on this road, but nothing that moves on its own. I ease off the accelerator, letting the rig slow down to 50 miles per hour. My eyes stay locked on that flicker, and I find myself leaning forward, squinting against the rain. The glow seems to drift closer, always just at the edge of my vision. I tap the brakes lightly. No hazard lights, just the gentle signal that there's trouble ahead. Nothing behind me follows suit. The road is empty except for me and that impossible glow. Curiosity and dread wrestle in my chest as I roll past. Mile marker 112. The glow dances now on the guardrail, then vanishes entirely when I shine my high beams. I flick them off again, no sense blinding myself or spooking whatever it is. For a moment the only sound is the drumming rain and the hum of the diesel engine. Then, faintly, I hear something else. A soft shuffle, like feet moving across wet gravel. My breath catches. I glance in the mirror, nothing but darkness and rain. I press a button on the dash to lower my window, just enough to listen. The cold air rushes in, carrying the scent of wet earth and ozone. Thunder rumbles overhead. I strain my ears against the wind. There it is again. That soft scrape of something moving alongside the road. I kill the engine, letting the truck coast to a stop. Silence settles thick as fog. I grab my flashlight from the console, heart pounding, and step out onto the slick pavement. Rain spatters the flashlight beam as I scan the shoulder. Tall grass sways in the darkness, shadows flickering. My breath fogs in the beam, each exhale feeling impossibly loud. I step forward, flashlight shaking in my grip, searching for footprints, debris, anything to explain the noise. But the ground is smooth, undisturbed. No tired tracks, no footprints. It's like nothing's been here at all. I shake my head, telling myself it was just my imagination. Maybe a branch scraping as it fell or a loose piece of road sign clattering in the wind. I climb back into the cab, heart still racing, and close the door. The rig hums back to life. I give the rig a tap and ease it back onto the road. When I reach the next rest stop, I park, kill the engine, and sit in the dark for a while, trying to shake the chill crawling up my spine. Sleep doesn't come easy that night. Every time I close my eyes, I see the flicker in the mirror, the sound of gravel under unseen feet. By dawn, I'm running on adrenaline and coffee. I chalk it up to a long haul and bad weather, but part of me can't let it go. I've driven through storms, through lonely desert highways, and never felt so unnerved. 2 nights later, curiosity gets the better of me. I plot the same route again, determined to understand what I saw. The storm has passed, but the road is still slick. I glance at the clock, 12:07 a.m. I'm back on mile marker 112, in the same stretch of pines and guardrails. My headlights sweep the Shadurna thing. I force the rig to slow. At 12:13 a.m., it happens. A pale glimmer appears 100 yards back, hovering just off the asphalt. My pulse spikes this time. I kill the engine before getting out. I grab my flashlight and step onto the shoulder. Eyes trained on the spot where the light first showed. The air is still, the forest silent, except for distant night birds. My boots sink into soft ground. I walk toward the glow flashlight raised, but when I get there, it's gone. No lantern, no glow, just the wet ground and fallen pine needles. I sweep the beam across the trees, the fence, the road. Nothing. I feel a cold sweat break out on my neck as I turn to head back. My light catches on something near the guardrail. A single muddy footprint, size 13. It's fresh, impressively deep. No other prints around it, just that one, like someone stepped down and vanished into thin air. I stand frozen for a moment, staring at that solitary footprint. The thunderstorm, the flickering light, the moving shadows, it all rush back. I snap a picture with my phone, then climb back into the cab, trying to steady my breathing. I can't explain what I'm dealing with. A prankster with a powerful lantern, a lost hiker, or something else entirely. Whatever it is, it doesn't play by the rulings. Tourneys. I stick strictly to the main highways. I still run Tananite hauls, but I never push past 11 p.m. near that mile marker. Some nights I swear I see a faint glow in my mirror too. I grip the wheel, reminding myself it's just my imagination. But deep down I wonder, what was it that kept pace with me in the storm before vanishing into thin air? So next time you're driving alone on a lonely highway in the rain, keep your eyes on the mirrors and your mind on the road. You never know who or what might be following just out of sight. This is the end of the first story of the night. Next is the second story of the night. The name of the story is Power Outage and Restoration at the Lakeside Cabin. It was a warm midsummer evening when John and Emily pulled off Highway 23 onto the narrow dirt road that led to Wexler's Lake Cabin. The sun was already dipping below the treetops, painting the sky in soft apricot and lavender hues. They'd rented the place for a long weekend, no cell service, no city lights, just the calm quiet of the lake. Emily rolled down her window to inhale the scent of pine and campfire ash. The air felt heavy with promise, the kind that makes you slow your heartbeat on purpose. Inside, the cabin was rustic, but welcoming. Knotty pine walls, a stone fireplace filled with neatly stacked logs, and a wall of windows looking out over a still mirror of water. A single flickering lantern on the wooden table cast warm circles of light. They unpacked sandwiches, cheese, and a bottle of Riesling they'd been saving for a quiet night. Outside, the pines whispered in the breeze, and the distant loon cawed once, twice, then fell silent. It felt like time had paused just for them. After dinner, they took a slow walk down to the dock, feet sinking into the cool, damp sand. The lake was glassy, reflecting the first stars like pinpricks of silver. Emily dangled her toes in the water, while John skipped a stone that skimmed 3 times. Above them, the Milky Way spilled across the sky, and for a moment everything felt perfectly safe. They headed back inside around 10 o'clock. As John flipped the switch for the overhead lamp, nothing happened. Just a soft thunk and darkness. Emily's lantern guttered for a second. Outside the windows, the trees looked black and endless. John muttered that it must be a blown fuse or a storm further upstream, taking out power lines. Emily stayed by the window, watching him disappear into the night. The beam of his flashlight bobbed between tree trunks until it reached the shed. A few seconds later, the beam cut out abruptly. She called his name once. Tuiseno. Answer. The wind stirred the pines. Somewhere, an owl hooted. Her heartbeat felt loud in the hush. John reappeared, flashlight back on, shaking his head. Nothing blown? No loose wires, he said in a low voice. Maybe the main line's out. I'll check inside the box again. Together they peered into the dimly lit shed. Metal conduits, a handful of breaker soles seemed intact. He flipped each switch methodically. Still nothing. They returned to the living room, now lit only by the lantern. John sat by the fireplace, fanning imaginary embers. Emily wrapped herself in a wool blanket and crossed her legs on the couch. Tiny moths hovered just outside the window pane. Rain began to patter faintly against the roof. It felt cozy, in spite of the blackout. Suddenly the cabin phone rang. Emily jumped. They'd assumed there was no landline, but there it was, shrill and insistent. John answered on the first ring. Hello? His voice was steady but low. Silence. Then, faint and distant, a soft voice, camouflaged by static, whispered, Can you see me? Emily's blanket fell to the floor. John gripped the phone tighter. Who is this? He asked. The line crackled. I'm right outside your window, the voice replied, softer now, almost a sigh. Then the line went dead, the click echoing in the small room. They stared at each other. John checked the caller. I know number, just unknown. He cycled through the call logs. Nothing showed. Emily's lip trembled. Outside, the rain had stopped. A loose shutter banged once in the breeze. They remained glued to the lantern's circle of light, neither daring to move. Finally, John set the phone down and leaned back. He told Emily it was probably a prank, maybe a misdial from a nearby campsite. Emily wanted to believe him, so she nodded. He fetched another blanket and draped it over her shoulders. Somewhere in the dark, they both knew. It felt too precise, too personal to be random. They fell asleep on the couch, lantern light dancing across the wall. Emily dreamed of shadowy figures floating outside her window. John dreamed he was dialing 911, but could never get a connection. At exactly 3:17 a.m., the cabin phone shrieked again. Only this time no whisper, just one word in a voice that chilled their blood. Hello? Emily bolted upright, heart hammering. John fumbled for the phone, but hadn't moved it from the table. The lantern lay on its side out of oil. The room was plunged into total darkness. They held each other for an agonizing minute before Emily remembered the flashlight in her jacket pocket. When the beam cut through the darkness, they saw the window pane was wet raindrops. Though it hadn't rained, a palm-sized handprint smeared the glass. John touched it gently. The glass was cold. Emily rubbed her eyes. No footprints led up to the window, just the handprint as if someone pressed against the pane to peer in. They didn't speak. John grabbed his keys, and Emily slipped on her shoes. They bolted down the shed's porch steps and into the car. The engine roared to life, headlights blinding them. For a moment through the windshield they saw the cabin door swing shut on its own. They didn't look back again. The ride to the nearest town was a blur of white line reflections and thumping hearts. At a 24-hour diner, over burnt coffee and breakfast hash, they shivered, recounting every detail. The waitress asked if they needed the sheriff. John just shook his head and whispered. Weeks later, John found a grainy photo on his phone taken automatically. He's sure of the cabin window, with that single handprint glowing in the flash. There was no phone number attached, no caller ID, just open questions. And why wouldn't it stay inside the cabin? So if you ever hear a phone ring in the dead of night where you least expect it, and the line goes silent, except for your own breathing, remember what Emily and John learned at Wexler's Lake. Some calls aren't meant to be answered. That's it for the second story of the night. Next is the third story of the night. The name of the story is The Name That Disappeared from the Campus Broadcast. It's 10 o'clock on a Friday night at Ridgewood High, and the corridors are deserted except for the hum of the PA system in the main office. Sarah, the junior class vice president, volunteered to stay late and record next week's announcements. She settles behind the control board, adjusting the mic levels and sipping lukewarm coffee. Outside the window, the parking lot lights cast long, empty shadows across the asphalt till the clock on the wall clicks to 10:15 and the speakers crackle to life on their own. Sarah straightens, glancing at the readout on her console. No scheduled playback. The speakers emit a soft crackle, then a clear, calm voice. Good evening, Ridgewood students. This is Jordan Blake, class of 04. I'd like to welcome you all back to school. Sarah frowns. Jordan Blake graduated 15 years ago. She hits the stop button, but the voice continues. Tonight, someone's gone missing. Listen closely. A chill runs down Sarah's spine. She rewinds the recording, a sign of Jordan's voice in her session logs. She taps her headset mic, ready to speak, but the undercurrent of static fades into complete silence. Across the hall, the janitor's closet door creaks open, then shuts, though she knows there's nobody else in the building. She exhales, chalking it up to a ghostly prank. 20 minutes later, she hits the play button again to finish her announcement. Draft. The usual reminders: pep, rally, spring break. Signups roll out smoothly. Then the voice glitches. Don't wonder be East Wing tonight. I'm still here. Sarah's hand trembles as she jots a note on her script. Check East Wing. She glances at the long hallway beyond the office window, dark lockers looming like silent sentinels. She stands, flicks off the console lights, and steps into the hallway. Headset still on, her footsteps echo softly. The East Wing is cold and empty. Classroom doors locked. She passes room 214, Jordan's old homeroom, and pauses. The door is ajar, a sliver of pale light creeping out. Her heart hammers as she pushes it open. Inside, the overhead lights are off. but a single desk lamp illuminates the teacher's podium. On the chalkboard, words are scrawled in neat, unfamiliar handwriting. "You heard me, I'm here." Sarah's breath catches. She steps forward, noticing a cassette recorder on the podium. It's red, REC, light, blinking. She fumbles with it and presses play. Jordan's voice fills the room, calm but tense. "I never left. I was locked in this room after school one day and everyone forgot me. My name isn't in any records, but I'm still here waiting." Sarah's skin crawls. The recorder clicks off. Silence returns, thick and suffocating. She bolts out of the room, heart pounding, and rushes back to the office. The console shows one new tape file labeled 2:14 p.m. 10:45. There's no judge's name, no date, but the time matches. She plays it. Jordan's voice again, softer. "Tell them my story. Don't let me be forgotten." The speakers cut out, and the building's silence presses in. Sarah left the tape running through her headphones as she packed up and locked the office at midnight. She never mentioned it to anyone who would believe a ghost student announcement. But sometimes, driving past the East Wing on her way home, she pauses by room 214 and swears she hears a distant echo of Jordan's voice. This is the end of the third story. For tonight, next is the fourth story for tonight. The name of the story is The Carousel of the Abandoned Amusement Park. The full moon hung low over Crestwood Amusements, its pale light casting long shadows across rusted steel and cracked concrete. We'd driven out past midnight on a dare. 3 friends armed with cameras and enough flashlights to light up half the park. The ticket booth lay empty, its windows boarded up. Faded posters fluttered in the breeze, promising summer fun that never came. As we stepped through the torn velvet curtain of the entrance arch, the only sound was the crunch of gravel under our boots, and our own breath in the cool night air. The carousel was the first attraction we found, nestled in a clearing ringed by oaks. Its paint was peeling, pastel horses frozen mid-gallop, eyes dull and unseeing. We set up tripods, exchanging nervous smiles. Mark adjusted the focus on his DSLR, while I clicked my shutter in time-lapse mode. Jenna aimed a wide-angle lens at the whole ride, whispering. At first nothing happened. The night air was still except for a lone cricket hidden in the grass. The carousel sat silent and lifeless, as though decades had passed since its last spin. Then, without warning, the music box inside groaned to life. An old-fashioned tune played in warped, lopsided notes. The horses creaked as the platform turned, moving so slowly that at first we thought it was an illusion. I felt a shiver run down my spine. Mark raised an eyebrow. "No one's touching it," he murmured. Jenna's flashlight beam danced across the horses' faces, exaggerating their empty eyes. I stepped closer, the beam trembling in my hand. The tune stuttered once, then steadied. Looping over and over, we kept filming, our breathing loud in our ears. Every so often a faint breeze would swirl through the clearing, carrying the musty scent of damp wood. Curiosity outweighed our fear. Jenna motioned for us to climb onto the platform. We paused at the edge-a-thon. All 3 of us stepped aboard. The horses lurched beneath us, but the movement was so slow. Mark crouched to get a closer shot of the mechanism. I leaned back against a chipped unicorn. The carousel revolved, carrying us in the gentle arc of its rusty circle. From the saddle everything looked different. The moonlight pooled in silvery patches on the ground. The towering Ferris wheel in the distance seemed to bow at us, its cabin swaying gently. Below, the midway booth stood empty, their striped awnings drooping. I trained my camera on an old ticket booth, its glass shattered, a single stub of paper fluttering on the counter like a ghostly flag. The wind picked up, rattling the carousel's frame. I caught sight of something in the mirror-polished brass polemy. Reflection. 3 figures staring back, eyes wide, but behind me, I thought I glimpsed another rider, a silhouette. When I swung the beam around, there was nothing but empty space. My heart pounded as I told myself it was just a trick of the light. We decided to get off before night turned to dawn. Mark jumped down first, almost slipping on slick moss. Jenna and I followed, the platform slowing to a halt of its own accord. The music stopped abruptly. Silence reclaimed the clearing. Mark looked at his watch. 1:17 a.m., exactly the time the ride had started when we first arrived. As we backed away, Jenna's flashlight swept over a tangle of cables and pulleys hidden in the underbrush. "Look at this," she whispered, pointing to what looked like part of the original motor assembly. The wires trailed off toward the old maintenance shed, half buried in vines. We exchanged glance. No one wanted to check it out in the dark. We'd seen enough. Halfway to the exit, a single carousel horse broke free from the lineup and clattered to the ground. We froze. The horse's eyes stared up at us, glassy and accusing. Mark fumbled a photo, the flash illuminating chipped paint and rust. When the flare died, the horse lay still again. We ran, flashlights bobbing, laughing nervously to keep fear at bay. Back at the car, we locked the doors and sat in the engine's residual warmth. The ride home was quiet. No one spoke, each of us replaying the night's images in our heads. As we pulled onto the highway, the first light of dawn brushed the horizon. Crestwood Amusements faded behind us, its rusted carousel frozen in the dawn glow, like a memory you can't quite shake. A week later, I downloaded our footage and found something unsettling. The time-lapse capture showed the carousel completing exactly 4 full rotations before stopping, no more, no less. We'd only been on it for 2 minutes. I haven't gone back, and neither has anyone I know. But sometimes, late at night, I swear I can still hear that warped melody drifting through my dreams. This is the end of the 4th story for tonight. Next is the 5th story for tonight. The name of the story is Midnight Shop in the Border Town. It was just past 2 a.m. when I flipped the open sign on and stepped behind the counter of our little 24-hour convenience store on Highway 85, 6 miles north of the Mexican border. The fluorescent tubes overhead hummed in the empty air, casting a sterile glow over rows of dusty snacks. And energy drinks outside, cactus silhouettes, danced against the headlights of passing rigs. I'd been working the graveyard shift for 2 years, and I had a routine down to the minute. Restock the beer cooler at 1:15, sweep the floor at 1:30, check the CCTV at 1:45. By 2 o'clock, I'd usually be sipping weak coffee and skimming the overnight news on the mounted flat screen. No customers, no surprises, just the hum of the refrigerator and the distant thrum of Border Patrol radios. That night at exactly 2:07 a.m., the door chimed. I looked up. Only a tall man in a weather coat stood in the harsh light, his face half shadowed under a brimmed hat. He rolled a battered leather suitcase beside him and didn't rush to the counter, just waited. My first thought, a trucker grabbing snacks. My second, kind of odd to show up so late and buy nothing but. He stepped forward and placed one single can of something, On the counter, an obscure Mexican soda called Luna Rosa, bright pink label and all. No chips, no jerky, nothing else. I rang it up. 99 cents. He fished out exactly 18 quarters from his pocket, laid them in a neat stack, and slid them over without a word. I handed him the soda. His gloved fingers closed around it. Then he leaned in close voice, low as desert sand. "Tell her I'll be home soon." Then he turned and walked out. I stared at the door until it chimed itself shut, rattling the desert night. I shrugged it off. Must be someone's lonesome uncle or a traveler on the run. I reset the register, wiped my palms on my jeans, and returned to my coffee. But when I glanced at the security monitor, I saw him standing just outside the sliding glass, his shape darker than the desert behind him. One moment he was there, the next he wasn't. No footprints in the gravel, nothing but wind-blown tumbleweed. The next night, same time, same bell. I braced myself. He rolled in suitcase. First, stopped 3 feet from the counter. This time he didn't wait silently. His shoulders trembled like wind-shaken grass. He set the same can of pink soda down. I rang it up. He counted out coins again, but paused with a quarter in midair. No words. He just stared at me, eyes hidden, and left. I pocketed the quarter and watched the door close again. I flipped to playback on the CCTV. Nothing in the gravel lot for as far back as the cameras saw. No tire tracks, no shadows. It was like he'd appeared out of thin air and vanished the same way. I felt absurdly spooked. I checked my phone. 2:07 a.m. Again exactly. I started, keeping a ledger. Date, time, number of coins. Exact words. Night 3. He arrived 15 minutes early, suitcase in hand, and stood motionless, staring at the rows of neon beer signs. I offered him a coffee. Instead, first time I ever spoke to him, he glanced at me, blinked once, and shook his head. Then he set down the pink soda and whispered, "Tell her I won't be long." She was on night 4. The power blinked as he walked in. The lights dipped, the refrigerators hummed louder, then settled. He paused under the flicker, suitcase unzipped, pulling from an inner pocket a small faded photograph. He held it flat on the counter, a black and white snapshot of a woman and a young girl, both smiling at some family picnic years ago. He said, "She'll know." Then he picked up his soda and photo, paid, and vanished into the night breeze. I almost called the sheriff. Instead, I tucked the photo behind the register and whispered into the night, "Safe travels." He never said thank you. Night 5 came and went with no visitor. On night 6, there was a bulletin on the TV about a missing man crossing into Arizona. Description matched. Mid-40s, dark coat, carrying an old suitcase. No one knew his name, no one saw him, but his wife and daughter. Tonight, his soda can still sits on the counter half opened, condensation drying in strange patterns. The photograph remains tucked beside the cash drawer. Sometimes I hear the door chime at 2:07. I keep the lights on until dawn, unwilling to let the dark swallow me whole. And each morning, I wonder if he finally went home, or if he's still out there, haunting the desert highway, in search of a story someone will tell. This is the end of the 5th story for tonight. Next is the 6th story for tonight. The name of the story is Vanished Sanatorium Corridor. I arrived at the old Crestview Sanatorium just after sunset, my car headlights cutting through the lingering dusk. The building's facade was crumbling, ivy crawling up broken windows. I'd come alone, armed with a flashlight, a voice recorder, and the promise of solitude for my research. The air felt cool and still, as if the place were holding its breath, waiting for me to step inside. The front doors were chained, so I slipped around to the side entrance. Rusted fire escape door slightly ajar. Inside, the lobby smelled of damp plaster and old linen. My footsteps echoed on cracked tile as I set down my backpack and turned on the flashlight beam. Part of me expected a sudden gust or a ghostly moan. Instead, there was only the steady drip of water from a broken pipe and the soft hum of settling walls. I checked my recorder and began a soft narration. December the 3rd, 9:15 p.m., Crestview Sanatorium, East Wing. The light scanned across a large open stairwell plunging down into darkness. Each step looked slick with moss and dust. I hesitated, then stepped down, counting quietly under my breath. 1, 2, 3. The beam revealed peeling wallpaper patterned with faded fleur-de-lis, now mottled and gray. Halfway down I heard it, a distant shuffle like someone dragging feet along the corridor below. I froze, heart steady but alert. The sound faded, then came again so faint. I wasn't sure if it was real. I eased forward, the beam grazing, an old brass doorplate stamped, "Ward, C locked." The door was slightly open, a thin line of yellow light escaping the crack. I pushed the door open with a slow creak. Inside, the room was small and empty, except for a rusted gurney in the center, its wheels locked in place. The walls were streaked with water damage, and the linoleum floor bulged in places. I swept the flashlight around, imagining patients once confined here. Their whispers carried on drafts that still lingered in the corners. A sudden breeze stirred the papers on a small side table, a patient logbook with its cover curled and yellowed. I picked it up, leafing through entries dated 50 years, names, dates of admission, brief notes, hallucinations, wheezing cough. The last entry was different. "Do not let her out." My skin prickled. I closed the book and pocketed it, turning to leave the room. The hallway beyond was darker than before, as if the light from that open door had never reached it. I checked the recorder. Still rolling, I whispered, "Eckstein, Ward, etc.," and stepped back into the corridor, counting again. 1, 2. But when I reached 3, I realized I was still in the same spot. I swept the beam down the endless rows of closed doors, stretched both left and right, none marked "Sir" or otherwise. The air smelled of mildew and something faintly metallic. A soft tapping echoed from somewhere ahead, slow and rhythmic like fingernails drumming on wood. My breath caught. I eased forward, keeping the beam steady. At the corridor's end, I found a full-length mirror, its glass cracked in a spiderweb pattern. I froze when the beam revealed my reflection, and behind me, a pale figure in a hospital gown, face blurred and staring. I spun around, flashlight darting every which way. The corridor was empty. The tapping stopped. My recorded whisper cut through my own thoughts. "Did you see that?" My heart pounded as I retraced my steps, trying to find the stairwell back up. Doors I passed earlier were gone. Windows I remembered were replaced by solid wall. Panic fluttered in my chest, but I held the lights high and pressed on. The tapping resumed, closer now, coming from a side door partly open. I approached, hand hovering over the recorder's button. Inside, the small room was nothing but a single chair, and a barred window through which moonlight scored the floor. The tapping came from the window pane itself, light fingernails drumming on glass. I held my breath. Leaning in on the other side was empty air. Then, a soft voice. "Thank you for coming." My recorder slipped from my hand, and I ran. I found the stairwell at last and climbed 3 flights in a blur, exiting through the same side door I'd entered. Outside, the night air felt warm against my flushed cheek. My recorder lay on the ground, still running. I pressed stop and checked the playback. My own labored breath, followed by that gentle voice saying, "She's set free." I never returned to Crestview, but sometimes I dream of that corridor, the endless doors, the cracked mirror, and the soft tapping on glass. In my office now, the logbook sits on my shelf, its final page marked "Released, December the 4th, 12:03. And somewhere, I hope she's finally at peace. This is the end of the 6th story for tonight. Next is the 7th story for tonight. The name of the story is The Lost Row of the Lost Subway Train. It was 12:07 a.m. when I boarded the last downtown 6 train at Pelham Bay Park Station, my jacket pulled tight against the autumn chill. The platform was nearly empty. Just a lone MTA cleaner finishing her sweep at the front car. I slipped through the doors hissed shut behind me, and I moved straight to the last row of seats where the fluorescent lights flickered in time with the clack of the rails. I'm used to this quiet Rita one that clatters through the Bronx at 2 a.m., rattling wheels and distant hum of the East River Bridge echoing in the tunnel. The train car smelled of linoleum, old gum, and a hint of industrial cleaner. Graffiti-tagged panels rose and fell in my island. Like silent warnings, I dropped my backpack beside me, and the hushed solitude. I often ride this last train to clear my head. My shift at the diner ends after midnight, and the crawl home through empty streets feels like a small blessing. There's something comforting about the familiar stops: Westchester Square, Castle Hill Avenue, Parkchester Reach, name a beat in the quiet rhythm of my life. But tonight, when I glanced over my shoulder, I saw someone already in that last row. A tall figure, dressed in dark denim, and the hoodie pulled low, sat motionless 3 seats away. I caught just a glimpse of pale skin near the collar, but when I looked again, the window's reflection masked their face. I told myself it was a 10-a-night returno. Big deal. When the train lurched forward, I felt that familiar jolt, but this time, something in the car seemed off balance. I shifted in my seat and realized the figure hadn't moved an inch. No head bob, no scuff of sneakers, just a rigid outline against the cracked pylon seat. My pulse quickened. I tapped my foot, listening to the rhythmic thump on the tracks. I tried to make out more details. The hoodie was Plano logo, no tag. The jeans looked worn, cuffed at the ankles. I wondered if I should say something, maybe, "Hey, is this seat taken?" But my throat went dry. The only sound was the metallic groan of wheels negotiating a tight curve. The lights overhead fluttered as we passed under a bridge, plunging the car into near darkness for a heartbeat. When they snapped back and the figure had slid 1 seat closer, my heart lurched. I stared hard, blinking twice to make sure I wasn't dreaming. Their head was turned toward me now, but the hood still kept their face in shadow. I swallowed hard and whispered, "You okay?" The response was a low, hollow chuckle that seemed to echo from every metal beam. Goosebumps rose on my arms. I didn't wait for more. I grabbed my bag and stood, ready to step off at the next station. But when I moved, the car seemed to stretch longer. The doors felt miles away. The announcer's voice crackled. Next up, CANALSTREET. Relief flooded me. I could jump off there. I edged down the aisle, every footfall loud enough to wake ghosts. The figure stayed seated, watching me with that hollow laugh hanging in the air. I didn't look back. I reached the doors and hit the yellow strip to open them. The doors slid open, and I spilled onto the platform, knees weak. I turned to look back just in time to see empty seats and flickering light. No figure, no hoodie, nothing but the echo of my own heartbeat. The doors hissed closed, and the train slid away into the tunnel, the rhythmic clack fading into silence. I waited for the next uptown train, hands trembling around the railing. Every few seconds I looked back through the subway car windows. There was no sign of the figure. When the Uptown 4 finally arrived, I boarded and sat near the front. I stared at my reflection in the glass, half expecting to see that hood behind me. I told the conductor about it the next day. He laughed and said the cameras never pick up any passenger in that last row after midnight. He called it an optical illusion, but late at night I still ride the 6 train, sometimes. Only I avoid the last car altogether. And if you ever find yourself alone in the final row of the last train home, do yourself a favor. This is the end of the 7th story for tonight. Next is the 8th story for tonight. The name of the story is Blue Campfire on the Edge of the Desert. I was driving north on Highway 191 through the Arizona desert just after sunset, the sky deepening into bruised purples and indigos. My friend Mia was tucked in the passenger seat, scrolling through her phone for free campsites. We'd left Flagstaff hours ago, chasing cooler air and starry skies. The red rock mesas flanked us silent. Around 8:15 p.m., Mia gasped and pointed. Far off to our right, past a low scrub of mesquite, a tiny blue flame flickered on the horizon. It pulsed faintly, a cool azure glow against the warm desert tones. "Campfire," she whispered. I squinted, turned off my headlights for a moment, sure enough. The flame hovered where no campsite should exist. We pulled off the asphalt onto a washboard dirt track. Every bump rattled the frame. As we drew nearer, the flame's light revealed the silhouettes of 5 empty folding chairs arranged in a perfect semicircle. No smoke curled up, only that soft, undulating blue. We killed the engine. Silence, dropping like a curtain. The desert air smelled of creosote and hot earth cooling. I flicked on my flashlight, intending to snap a picture. Mia raised her phone, camera butt. The screen went blank. The second she focused on the flame. "Nothing's coming through," she said, brow furrowed. I set the flashlight on the ground and knelt beside the chairs. Each chair leg sank slightly into the sand, but there were no footprints leading to them. "How'd someone even get here?" I murmured. The flame pulsed once, slow as a heartbeat, and the chairs creaked just a hair, as if someone had shifted weight. Maya edged forward, voice hushed. "Should we call it in? Authorities might think it's some cult thing." I shook my head. "No cell signal out here, and I don't feel right about it." We stood back, watching the flame sway to an unseen rhythm. The chairs looked too neatly placed, too purposeful. A soft wind rustled the mesquite, carrying the distant cry of a coyote. At that moment, the flame shot up twice its height, brightening the chairs in neon blue. We both yelped and jumped back. My torchlight rattled across the desert ridge for a split second. Then the flame shrank to its original size, heart pounding. I kicked a pebble into the firing, and it vanished on contact. Mia exhaled sharply. "That's it, we're out of here." I nodded, scooped up my flashlight, and re-sprinted back to the car without looking back. We barreled onto the highway, dust trailing in our wake. Once the desert lights disappeared behind us, we glanced at the clock. 8:32 p.m. exactly, 17 minutes from the moment we'd first spotted the flame. Neither of us spoke until Flagstaff's neon glow welcomed us back to civilization. That night, neither of us slept. We Googled sightings of blue flames, desert apparitions, anything. Nothing matched our experience. By morning, I drove back out with a metal detector and shovel. The spot was flat, undisturbed, no fire ring, no chairs, not even a single chair imprint in the sand. Weeks later, I found an untouched camping chair on sale at a roadside stand near Winslow. Same style, same folding latch. I bought it on a whim and kept it in my attic. Sometimes, late at night, I swear I see its outline flicker in my bedroom doorway, bathed in that impossible blue. I never answer the call to investigate again. This is the end of the 8th story for tonight. Next is the 9th story for tonight. Appalachian Mountains. The sky was a wash of deep purple and rose, and the last gold. The name of the story is Children's Laughter. In the deep forest, I set out on the trail just before dusk, lacing up my boots at the Pine Ridge trailhead. Lacing up my boots at the Pine Ridge trailhead in the heart of the Ann Rays filter through towering oaks. I carried only a small pack with water, a flashlight, and my journal, planning to hike until sundown, then camp beside a creek. There was a hush to the forest, broken only by the occasional rustle of leaves underfoot. About an hour in a low fog rode down the slopes, swallowing the trail ahead in a soft gray haze. The air turned cool and damp, each breath tasting faintly of earth and moss. My flashlight beam cut a narrow path through the mist, illuminating dew-laden ferns and gnarled roots. Every snapped twig under my boot sounded magnified, echoing through the white curtain. I paused to adjust my hood when I heard it, a child's laugh, clear and musical, drifting through the mist behind me. It sounded close, just beyond 3 paces. My heart skipped a beat. "Hello," I called softly, half expecting no answer. The woods were silent again. Curiosity pulled me forward. I stepped off the main trail onto a faint side path, following the laughter's echo. The fog thickened, the tree trunks growing closer together. My flashlight caught something pale on a fallen log. Small doll's shoe, scuffed and damp. It was the first tangible proof that someone or something had been here. Another laugh rippled through the air so close I spun around, beam flashing wildly. No child appeared in the beam, only swirling mist and the dark shapes of trees. Then came the soft patter of bare feet on leaf litter, moving in a circle around me. I stood frozen, every nerve alive with cold adrenaline. I called out again, voice shaking, "Who's there? Show yourself." The mist ahead stirred, parting to reveal a small clearing, ringed by young pines. In the center lay a wooden rocking horse, old-fashioned and chipped. its mane painted white, now grayed with age. The horse rocked gently, though no breeze stirred the trees. A soft giggle floated from the rocking horse, and the beam trembled in my hand. I edged closer, heart hammering. The horse's painted eyes seemed to follow me. Beside it lay a tiny backpack, blue canvas, unzipped, empty. I swallowed hard. The forest floor felt impossibly deep beneath men. A whisper just beside me. No one. The whisper came again, closer, urgent. Play. My knees buckled. I stumbled backward, dropping the beam to my feet. In that pool of light I saw tiny footprints, 6-inch imprints in the damp earth, leading toward the trees. Fear floored me. I scrambled upright and fled back the way I came, fog swirling at my heels behind me. The laughter echoed light, mocking, fading into the trees. I didn't stop running until the trailhead lights came into view, until the fog lifted, until my breathing slowed. That night in my tent I lay awake, the forest's hush interrupted by phantom giggles at the edge of sleep. My flashlight sat by, my boot unused. At dawn I packed and left no journal entry, no second look. The mountains fell silent behind me. Weeks later I found a child's shoe half buried in my campsite's fire pits, mossy, oddly familiar. I returned it to the forest's edge and said a quiet prayer. I still hear that laughter when the woods grow silent, and sometimes when the fog drifts in, I swear I feel tiny hands brushing my arm, asking once more, "Will you play with me?" This is the end of the 9th story for tonight. Next is the 10th story for tonight. The name of the story is Echo. Piano in the old garage. I pulled into the driveway of my grandparents' old suburban home just after midnight. Headlights slicing through the quiet street. The house was dark, save for a lone porch light casting a soft yellow glow. I'd come to the detached garage at the back my new workshop for refinishing vintage furniture. The night air smelled of honeysuckle and damp grass, and everything felt hushed, like the world was holding its breath. Inside the garage, my flashlight beam swung across stacks of wooden chairs and a battered workbench. I'd spent the past week stripping layers of old paint from an oak rocking chair, and tonight I planned to sand the arms smooth. The only sound was the soft buzz of the refrigerator I kept full of cold drinks. I set my tools on the bench and reached for the sander when I heard it. A soft, hesitant piano note floating through the thin wall that separated the garage from the house. My breath caught. It was the exact melody my Uncle James used to play those opening bars of Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major. I paused, heart thudding in my chest. The sander switch hung harmlessly in my hand. Outside, cicadas droned in the dark. I told myself it must be a neighbor practicing late. But the notes were too familiar, too precise. Uncle James hadn't touched those keys in decades, and he certainly hadn't been alive. The note drifted again, a gentle arpeggio, winding up the scale. I set the sander down, careful not to jar the bench, and tiptoed toward the door leading into the house. Every step sounded loud on the concrete floor. My flashlight beam trembled against the wall. I cracked the door open and peered into the dark hallway. The music swelled, warm, melancholy. It flowed down the hall from the living room piano, just as I remembered. Pale lamplight spilled over the polished keys. I stepped inside, pulled the door gently closed behind me. No one sat at the bench. The piano lid was down, but the music played on, notes rising from inside the instrument itself. I approached slowly, feeling the hairs on my neck prickle. I lifted the lid without hesitation, the keys depressed of their own accord, one by one. As the melody continued unbroken, I reached out, hand trembling, and touched middle C right as the melody resolved. The music stopped abruptly, leaving a hush so deep I could hear my own pulse. The bench sat empty, polished wood gleaming. My reflection shimmered in the piano's black lacquer. I whispered, "James," the name trembling on my lips. No answer, only the soft whir of the ceiling fan. I pulled up a stool and sat, placing my fingers lightly on the keys. Almost without thinking, I began to play, continuing the nocturne where it left off. My notes blended with the echo of my uncle's touch. When I finished, the silence felt softer somehow, like a sigh of relief. I closed the lid gently and rose, drifting back toward the garage door. Behind me, I thought I heard a faint applause, a single warm clap. Back in the garage, I turned on the work light, feeling oddly at peace. My tools lay waiting, but I no longer felt the urge to sand that chair tonight. Instead, I leaned my head back, closed my eyes, and let the memory of the music linger. Uncle James's presence was gone, but his melody remained. That wraps up tonight's 10 stories. Now let the sound of the waves keep you company as you drift off. Sleep tight and sweet dreams.